What if I told you that one arrogant sentence could cost you 200 hours of your life? Today you are about to see how a teenager who thinks the law is beneath him walks into a courtroom with a smirk and walks out carrying a very different weight on his shoulders. I'll get you fired. That's the first thing Brandon Mitchell says that anyone in the courtroom really hears. His voice is not loud, but it cuts straight through the low murmur of shuffling papers and creaking benches. For a heartbeat, the room seems to forget how to breathe. The clerk's pen stops, the court reporter's fingers freeze above the keys, and Officer Martinez, standing by the door, shifts his stance like someone who just heard a glass crack in a crowded room. Judge Frank Caprio looks up slowly from the file on his desk. He's an older man, hair silver at the temples, glasses low on his nose, robe falling in clean lines around his shoulders. He has spent decades in this municipal courtroom, listening, weighing, sometimes forgiving, sometimes punishing. He has seen anger, tears, brave bravado, and despair, but the way Brandon says it, like a bored customer talking to a waiter, still lands differently. "I'm sorry?" the judge asks very gently. "Could you repeat that, please?" Brandon leans back like he's in the back row of a classroom, not 3 meters from a bench of law. 17 years old, varsity jacket thrown over a hoodie, spotless sneakers kicked out in front of him. His phone lies face down on the table, lock screen still glowing faintly. Behind him, in the second row, his father sits with one arm stretched along the back of the bench, phone finally put away, but posture, saying that he expects the morning to end the way it always has for his family, with a fine quietly reduced and a problem quietly erased. "You heard me," Brandon says. "My dad knows people. One call, and you are done." The sentence hangs there, ugly and confident. A woman in the second row, gray coat, tired eyes, glances at the judge and then back at the boy as if trying to decide which of them she feels more sorry for. Officer Martinez shifts his weight again, but does not speak. He has heard insults in this room, heard curses and shouted excuses, but outright threat toward Judge Caprio is rare, almost unthinkable. The judge does not raise his voice. He takes off his glasses, folds them with care, and sets them next to the nameplate on his desk. His eyes never leave Brandon's face. "Mr. Mitchell," he says, calm and clear, "do you know what's going to happen in the next 20 minutes? Brandon shrugs, the corner of his mouth twitching. "Yeah," he says. "You're going to give me some lecture, then my dad will sort it out and we all go home." The confidence would almost be impressive if it were not so empty. Judge Caprio lets the silence stretch just long enough that even Brandon begins to feel it. "No," the judge says. "In the next 20 minutes, you are going to find out what your arrogance looks like when it is written down. And everyone watching is going to see whether the law means anything when it stands in front of money and entitlement." He glances toward the camera mounted on the wall, the one that records every hearing for public broadcast. "Before we go any further," he adds, his tone still conversational, "if you are watching this right now, stay with us. What you are about to see is uncomfortable, but it is exactly how consequences work when someone thinks they are untouchable." He turns back to the desk and opens the manila folder in front of him. It is thicker than any single speeding ticket has a right to be. Pages fan out under his hands, each one in a different shade of white and gray, some crisp, some already softened by fingerprints in time. The top page bears Brandon's full name in heavy block letters, the charge for today exceeding the limit in a school zone by a dangerous margin, printed in formal language beneath. "The citation that brings you here this morning is for driving far above the posted speed in a school area," the judge says. If that were all we had to discuss, this would be a very short conversation. But it is not all, is it? Brandon does not answer. For the first time, his eyes dart toward the folder, then back up again almost immediately, as if he regrets letting them wander. Judge Caprio starts to lift pages, not reading yet, only letting their number speak for itself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, more. Officer Martinez knows that rhythm. It is the sound of a simple case turning into a history lesson. "You see this?" the judge asks quietly, tilting the folder just enough that Brandon can see the thickness of it. "This is not about one morning on one street. This is a record. Choices you made, again and again, when no judge was looking at you." In the second row, Brandon's father finally straightens a little. His jaw tightens. He opens his mouth as if to say something, then closes it again when Judge Caprio's gaze sweeps past him for a fraction of a second. Not a threat, just a reminder of where he is. Brandon forces a laugh, though no one else is laughing. "So I drive fast," he says. "So what? You really going to act like I am some kind of criminal?" The judge does not answer with a speech. Instead, he taps the edge of the folder with 2 fingers and looks directly into the boy's eyes. "I am going to act," he says. "Like every time you decided the rules were for other people, you wrote another line in this file. And now we are going to read it aloud." The air in the courtroom feels denser now, as if the room itself is leaning in. Brandon slouches further into his chair, arms folded tight across his chest. The swagger is still there, but it has to work harder. Brandon purr. "Let us start simple," Judge Caprio says, sliding the top page free. "Over the past few months, you were stopped for driving far above the limit on a busy avenue, for weaving through traffic while looking at your phone, and for rolling straight through a red light at an intersection where people cross with children." He does not list every date, every statute number. Instead, as he speaks, the screen to his right flickers to life. Short clips from municipal cameras appear one after another. A sleek car shooting past a crosswalk where a stroller has just rolled back to the curb. The same car drifting across lanes while the driver glances down at something glowing in his hand. Brake lights flaring too late as a light changes to red and a pedestrian steps backward in alarm. "These images are not here to embarrass you," the judge continues. "They are here to remind you that a vehicle is not just a toy with an engine. It is weight and speed and risk." Brandon watches his own car flicker across the screen, smirking at first. "That one got a lot of views," he mutters. "Someone posted it. It went kind of viral." There's a ripple in the courtroom, a low sound, like cloth shifting in a pew. The woman in the gray coat looks at him with something between disbelief and pity. "So you are proud of that?" the judge asks. His voice is still mild, but the words land like a small gavel of their own. "Proud that the moment other people felt fear became entertainment for you?" Brandon rolls his eyes. "It is just a clip," he says. "Everyone does it." Judge Caprio studies him for a moment, then he nods to the clerk. "All right," he says, "let us put your pride on the record too. Play the recording, please." There's a soft click as the clerk starts the audio. A crackle of static, then Brandon's own voice fills the courtroom, younger by a few months but no less sure of itself. "You cannot do this," the recorded Brandon says sharply. "My father will have your badge." On the audio there is the muffled sound of a nervous laugh, the kind someone gives when they do not know what else to do. In the courtroom, no one laughs. The contrast between the two silences is stark. At the defense table, the present-day Brandon stiffens. He had forgotten how that moment sounded from the outside, without his friend's chatter, without the comfort of the car doors around him. Stripped down to tone and words, it is uglier than he remembers. "You had no right to record that," he says, grasping at the first argument he can reach. "The officer documented the encounter as part of his duty," Judge Caprio replies. "That record is now part of this file, just like the messages you sent afterwards." The lights in the room dim slightly as the screen behind the judge shifts from video to text. A cascade of messages scrolls into view, each one captured from Brandon's group chat with his friends. They are full of jokes about outsmarting patrol cars, about buying their way out of trouble, about how funny it is to watch officers back off when they realize who his father knows. The judge does not read every line. He lets a few linger long enough to be understood, then lets them slide away. The impact is not in the volume, but in the pattern. "You treat the law," he says finally, "like it is a minor obstacle between you and whatever you want to do that day. You treat other people's fear like background noise in your personal highlight reel." Brandon shifts in his seat. His jaw is clenched now, not in defiance, but in something more complicated. For the first time, he glances toward the back row, looking for his father. Their eyes meet for a brief second. There is no wink, no reassuring nod waiting for him there, only a man who looks for once as though he is not entirely sure what to say. A beat of silence. Then, Judge Caprio closes the folder halfway and rests his hand on it. "We are going to take a short recess," he announces. "When we return, we will look at one more incident. It happened near a school, and I believe it will make very clear what could have happened if luck had been slightly less generous to you." He lets that sink in. The word school hangs in the air like a faint siren. Brandon swallows. His mind races toward all the mornings that blur together. Music loud, tires squealing, friends laughing, a rush of power as the car leaped forward. One of those moments is about to come back for him, not as a memory he chose, but as a piece of evidence he cannot control. The judge lifts his gavel. "Court is in recess," he says. The sound of wood on wood is sharp, final, and for the first time since he walked in, Brandon does not reach for his phone. When the recess ends, the energy in the room is shifted. The chatter from the hallway does not follow people back to their seats. They file in quietly, as if returning to a theater after the lights have already gone down. Brandon walks slower now. He does not look at the cameras, does not scan for familiar faces. He sits, folds his hands on the table, and fixes his eyes on a knot in the wood. Judge Caprio returns to the bench with the same measured pace as before, but he does not reach for the folder right away. Instead, he looks at Brandon for a long, still moment, as if weighing not just what is in the papers, but what is in front of him. "Let us continue," he says. "Please dim the lights for the next piece of evidence." The courtroom dips into a softer gloom. The screen on the wall brightens, drawing every gaze toward it. For a second, there is only static, a gray shimmer, and then an image snaps into focus, a school hallway, lined with lockers the color of toothpaste, posters peeling at the corners, a bell ringing shrilly somewhere out of frame. The view shifts to the front doors. Students push through in clumps, laughing, adjusting backpacks, trading last jokes before heading home. Outside, the camera catches a strip of sidewalk, a curb, a quiet residential street where cars usually glide by at a careful pace. Not this time. Brandon's car blasts into the frame like a thrown object. The engine roars, tires kiss the curb, and for a terrifying instant the front bumper is much too close to a small figure stepping off the sidewalk. A boy with a trumpet case jerks backward, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent shout. The car swerves, misses him by less than a meter, and shoots away with a squeal of tires that feels almost obscene in the aftertaste of what did not happen. The video freezes on the boy's face. No one in the courtroom needs the judge to explain what they are looking at. The terror in those eyes is universal, easily translated into any language, the sentence that never quite arrives, the impact that almost was. "That," Judge Caprio says quietly, "is Tyler Henderson. He was 14 years old when this happened. He is still 14 now." The softness in his voice makes the words land harder than any shout could. Brandon stares at the frozen frame. He remembers the day now, but not like this. He remembers laughter in the car, a friend filming from the passenger seat, the rush of feeling the engine respond. In his mind, it has been a blur, a brag, a story where the only character who mattered was himself. Seeing it from the outside, the story rearranges itself around the boy with the trumpet. "Tyler was not physically harmed," the judge continues. "He stepped back in time, but since that afternoon he has not walked to school again. His mother drives him every morning, even when she's late for work. She sent a letter to this court. I would like to read part of it now." The screen fades to black. The lights come up just enough to see the paper in the judge's hand. He unfolds it slowly, the quiet rustle carrying clearly in the hushed room. "Your Honor," he reads, "my son used to love walking to school. He said it made him feel grown up. Since that day, he asks me 3 times every morning if I will be there to pick him up after class. He flinches when he hears loud engines. When we cross the street, he checks both ways, then checks again, then grabs my arm even when no cars are coming." The words are simple, almost plain, but they land with the weight of something much larger. Brandon's throat tightens. He does not want to imagine a kid standing by a window, listening for the rumble of cars and wondering which of them will get too close. "I know boys make mistakes," the judge continues. "I made some when I was young. I do not want this other boy to be ruined forever. I just want my son to feel safe again. I want the person who did this to understand that for him it was one moment, but for us it has been every day since." The judge lets the letter fall to silence for a long breath. No one in the room moves. Even the fluorescent lights seem to hum more quietly. Then he shifts his tone, slower, heavier. But there is one more thing. Each word stands on its own little island of time. The pause between them is wide enough for Brandon's heart to pound 3 times, 4, 5. Even people who have never seen this show before know somehow that they are approaching a hinge in the story. The court requested an evaluation, the judge says, to answer a simple question. Are you a young man who cannot feel for others, or a young man who has never had to face the true weight of what he does? He lifts a different sheet now, thinner than the letter, but no less important. His eyes skim it, then return to Brandon. The conclusion is not that you are incapable of empathy, he says. It is that you have been living in a world padded with cushions. Every sharp edge someone has hastened to cover for you. Every fall someone has stretched out a hand before you even realized you were falling. He leans slightly forward. His voice is almost a whisper now, but it carries. Today, for the first time, there is no cushion. The quiet that follows is not empty. It is crowded with images of Tyler on that sidewalk, of the officer hearing, "My father will have your badge," of every driver who logged another near miss and went home shaking. "Mr. Mitchell," the judge says, "please stand." Brandon rises. His legs feel unsteady, as if he's been walking on a moving floor for too long and only just found solid ground again. "For repeated dangerous driving," Judge Caprio says, each phrase clear and measured. "For treating this courtroom and its officers with contempt, for turning other people's fear into entertainment for yourself and your friends, this court sentences you to 200 hours of community service with the city's Public Works Department. You will spend your days clearing trash, cleaning sidewalks, and repairing the public spaces you took for granted." Brandon's chest tightens. 200 hours is not just a number. It is mornings, afternoons, weekends he had planned to spend behind the wheel or on his phone. "Your license to drive is suspended for 1 full year, the judge continues. "During that time, you will meet once a week with a mentor assigned by this court, someone who will track your service and, more importantly, your attitude. And in 30 days, you will return to this room with a written apology to Tyler Henderson and his family. You will read it aloud, here, on record." He lowers the paper. The sentence has been spoken. There's nothing more to explain. The room does not erupt. No one cheers, no one groans. Instead, an almost perfect stillness falls, as if the building itself is holding its breath for one long suspended moment. 1 second, 2, 3. Brandon's father looks at his son, not with the easy, indulgent exasperation he has worn in other offices and other corridors, but with something bordering on fear. A fear not of fines or lost connections, but of what this will do to the boy if he cannot bend. 4 seconds. 5. 6. The boy at the center of it all stares at a spot on the floor between his shoes. His jaw works as if he wants to speak, to protest, to say this is too much, too far. But the words never quite make it to his tongue. 7, 8, 9. Judge Caprio does not rush to fill the silence. He lets it spread, a quiet that is louder than any lecture he could give. Somewhere in that space, something small and stubborn inside Brandon gives way, not with a dramatic crack, but with a subtle shift. 10, 11, 12. When the judge finally speaks again, his voice is almost gentle. "You may sit," he says. "Your service starts this week." Brandon lowers himself back into the chair. For the first time since he walked into the courtroom, he does not look like someone who expects to walk out untouched. He looks like someone who has just realized that his life will not continue in a straight line, no matter who his father knows. 30 days later, the same courtroom greets him like a photograph that is faded at the edges, but held its center. The wooden benches have the same scratches, the same polished shine where countless hands have rested. The flag still stands in the same corner, colors a little muted by summer light. Officer Martinez is at his post, straightening his tie out of habit more than necessity. The difference is Brandon. He pushes open the heavy door himself. No one does it for him. His varsity jacket is gone. Instead, he wears a plain gray shirt with a small city emblem on the chest, the kind handed out to volunteers and workers. The fabric is stained in places with something that might be paint or dirt or both. His hands bear thin, healing blisters across the palms, the kind you get from pushing brooms and lifting bags, not from scrolling screens. His father walks beside him, slower than last time. The phone stays in his pocket. He nods respectfully to the bailiff, then takes a seat without stretching his arm along the back of the bench. He looks for once like a parent showing up to witness something, not to manage it. When Judge Caprio enters and the room rises, Brandon stands up straighter than he did before. He does not slouch. He does not smirk. He looks up at the bench and meets the judge's gaze with something that is not quite confidence and not quite guilt, but a mixture of both. This hearing reconvenes to review the completion of community service and the written statement ordered at our last session, the judge says. Mr. Mitchell, please approach. Brandon steps forward. A folded sheet of paper waits in his hand, edges soft from being opened and closed many times. He stands in the same spot where he once tossed out threats like loose change. It feels narrower now, more defined. When you are ready, the judge says. Brandon unfolds the paper. For a heartbeat, his eyes blur on the ink. Then he takes a breath and begins. My name is Brandon Mitchell, he reads, voice low but clear. 30 days ago, I thought punishment was about making someone feel small. I thought community service was just a way to embarrass me in front of people who watch this show. I was wrong. He glances up for a second, then back down. I have spent these weeks picking up things I never noticed before, he continues. Bottles in the grass by playgrounds, fast food bags on the side of the same roads I used to speed down. I work next to people who show up before dawn and leave after sunset, and they do it every day without complaining. One of them is a veteran who lost more than I can imagine. He told me, "You do not have to fix the whole world, kid. Just stop making it worse." I have been thinking about that every night. His voice steadies as he goes. I used to think being recorded made me look important, he says. Now I know it can also show the worst parts of you that you never meant anyone to see. I treated other people's fear like a background track. I treated this courtroom like a stage. I spoke to you, Your Honor, like the law was something I could talk my way around. I was arrogant. I disrespected the rules that keep people safe. I am especially sorry for what happened near Tyler's school. I did not hit him, but I understand now that sometimes almost is enough to leave a mark. He lowers the page just enough that his next words come from him, not from the ink. I cannot undo what I did, he says. I cannot reach back into that moment and slow down. All I can do is stand here, admit I was wrong, and try to live in a way that proves I learned something real. I am sorry. The last syllable hangs in the air. The paper trembles slightly in his hand. For several seconds, the judge says nothing. He studies the boy in front of him, the same height, the same face, but a different weight behind the eyes. Then he nods, once. Mr. Mitchell, he says, I have heard many apologies in this room. Some are crafted for effect. Some are spoken because someone's lawyer told them it would be wise. Yours may not be perfect, but it has something those others did not. Details you could not invent unless you had actually been there, bending your back, feeling the ache. A trace of something like relief moves across Brandon's features, quick but visible. Punishment is not meant to crush you, the judge goes on. It is meant to push you into a shape that fits better into the world around you. The hours you worked did not erase the past. They did something more useful. They introduced you to the kind of effort most people live with every day. He shifts his gaze, not just to Brandon, but to the line of cameras at the back of the room. The lens glints, unblinking. And to those watching this at home or on a screen in your hand, he says, ask yourself a question. If one of your worst moments were replayed in front of strangers, what would they see? Would they see someone who made a mistake and owned it? Or someone who built their whole identity on never being told no? The perspective of the scene widens, as if the courtroom walls have suddenly grown thinner. The judge's voice carries past the benches, past the cameras, out into living rooms and bus rides and late-night scrolls. It is easy to judge this young man, he adds. It is harder to admit the ways we all speed past other people's fear when it is inconvenient for us. Every person sitting in judgment of another will someday need someone else's patience. Remember that when you feel the urge to say, "This could never be me." He turns back to Brandon. You have completed the hours required of you, he says. You have returned to this room as ordered. The legal part of this case is finished. What you do next, when no one is filming, when no one is counting your hours, that will decide whether this was just a story for the cameras or the start of a different life. The gavel falls once, firm and final. Case concluded. The sound echoes, then fades into the rustle of people rising to leave. Brandon steps away from the table. As he reaches the door, he pauses for half a second and looks back at the bench where the judge still sits. There's no challenge in his gaze now, only a quiet, complicated gratitude he does not yet know how to express. Outside, the air feels different on his skin. The city hums the way it always has, buses sighing at curbs, engines idling at red lights, footsteps crossing streets in loose rhythm. Somewhere, on a quieter block not far from a school, a boy named Tyler stands at the edge of the road with a trumpet case in his hand. He looks left, then right, then left again. The cars that pass are slow and steady. He steps off the curb and walks across without flinching. Dramatization for storytelling and education, not legal advice or reporting.